used to believe that betrayal came from outsiders, people you barely knew, people you could walk away from. I never imagined it could come from the person I loved more than my own life. My son. Even now, saying those words out loud feels like tearing open a wound that refuses to heal. My name isn't important, but my story is. I'm a woman in my early 40s, and for most of my life, my world revolved around my only son. I raised him on my own after a painful divorce. We'd been through everything together: sleepless nights, hospital visits, endless exams, financial struggles. And somehow, through it all, we built a bond one thought was unbreakable. He wasn't just my child, he was my closest friend. 3 years ago, I remarried. It wasn't an impulsive decision. My new husband, Daniel, was kind, attentive, and made me feel seen again after years of loneliness. He was patient with my son, tried to win his trust, and gradually became a part of our little world. For the first time in years, my house felt warm again. Dinner conversations filled with laughter, movie nights on the couch, weekend breakfasts together, the kind of simple happiness I thought we deserved. My son, 21 now, was adjusting to adulthood. He was responsible, mature, and fiercely protective of me. I trusted him completely. If someone had asked me back then who I trusted most in this world, I would have said my son without hesitation. But looking back, there were signs, small things I didn't pay attention to. Late at night, I'd sometimes wake up for a glass of water and hear hushed voices downstairs. When I peeked, I'd catch Daniel and my son talking in the living room. Their faces would change the moment they saw me. Daniel would smile awkwardly. My son would look away. I convinced myself it was nothing. Maybe they were discussing something personal, maybe they were finally bonding. I wanted so badly to believe that. There was one night I remember clearly. I was heading to the kitchen when I saw a door quickly shut in the hallway. I heard footsteps, a whispered "shh," and then silence. My heart fluttered with unease, but I pushed it down. I'd been through too much in life to become paranoid over nothing. If only I had listened to that tiny voice inside me that night. If only I had questioned the uneasy feeling that clung to me as I climbed back into bed. Because that night wasn't just any night. It was the beginning of something that would shatter the very foundation of my world at first. I tried to ignore the uneasy feeling. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe I was overthinking. But slowly, the cracks began to show. Tiny, unsettling things that didn't make sense started happening, one after another, like puzzle pieces falling into place, forming a picture I wasn't ready to see. My son began acting distant with me. Not openly rude, but different. He avoided eye contact during meals. When I'd ask simple questions about his day, he'd give short, vague answers, then retreat to his room. Meanwhile, Daniel and my son seemed to grow closer, but not in the usual, heartwarming way. They whispered more. They exchanged quick glances when they thought I wasn't looking. Sometimes, I'd walk into a room, and the conversation would suddenly stop. The air would turn thick with silence. One afternoon, while doing laundry, I noticed something odd. A silk scarf, one of mine, tucked beneath a pile of my son's clothes. It wasn't just misplaced. It was hidden. I froze. I hadn't seen that scarf in weeks. My mind raced for logical explanations. Maybe he accidentally picked it up with the laundry. Maybe he borrowed it for something harmless. I forced myself to believe those excuses, even though my gut screamed otherwise. Then came the phone incident. Daniel left his phone on the kitchen counter one evening while taking a shower. Normally, I never looked through his things, I valued trust too much. But the screen lit up with a notification, and my eyes caught a glimpse of a message preview. I can't stop thinking about what we did. We need to be careful. My heart stopped. The sender's name was just an initial, J. I told myself not to jump to conclusions, but my hands trembled as I placed the phone back exactly where it was. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding. My thoughts were a mess: suspicion, guilt for suspecting them, fear of what I might uncover. I kept telling myself, this is my son. He would never betray me. But that small, relentless voice inside whispered, "Are you sure?" I didn't confront anyone. Not yet. Instead, I decided to watch. to listen. I began noticing patterns, late-night texts, hushed conversations, sudden changes in behavior. Each day, the doubt grew heavier, like a weight pressing on my chest. My once peaceful home now felt foreign, like I was living among strangers wearing familiar faces. I confided in no one. Who would believe me? Even I barely believed myself. But deep down, I knew something was terribly wrong. And the truth was closer than I could ever imagine. The day I discovered the truth didn't feel special. It began like any other. Quiet morning, a cup of coffee, birds outside the window. But something in the air felt off, a strange stillness I couldn't shake. Daniel had told me he'd be working late that evening, and my son said he had plans with friends. I decided to run errands earlier than usual, hoping to clear my head. But on my way back, as I approached the house, I noticed Daniel's car parked a few streets away. My heart gave a sharp, uneasy jolt. He wasn't supposed to be home. I parked quietly and entered through the back door. The house was eerily silent, but I could hear faint whispers upstairs. My instinct screamed at me to leave, to pretend I'd never heard them. But something stronger pulled me forward. Step by step, I climbed the stairs. With each step, the whispers became clearer. I stopped outside the guest room, where the door was slightly ajar. My hands were shaking. I leaned closer, and then I heard it. Daniel's voice. And my son's. My breath caught in my throat. Their words were low, urgent, and painfully intimate. "She doesn't suspect anything yet," Daniel whispered. "She trusts us too much," my son replied, a nervous laugh in his voice. The room began to spin. I pushed the door open slightly and froze at what I saw. They weren't just talking, they were together. My husband and my son, conspiring behind my back. Daniel's hand rested on my son's shoulder in a way that sent a chill down my spine. There was a closeness between them that went beyond what I could comprehend. I don't remember how long I stood there, silent, watching the scene unravel. It felt like time stopped. My mind scrambled for explanations, anything to make it less horrifying. But there was no mistaking their words, their body language, the quiet betrayal I was witnessing. My chest tightened. I felt like I couldn't breathe. The house that once felt like home suddenly became a stranger's place. Every memory, every shared laugh, every act of trust, all of it fractured in that moment. Quietly, I backed away before they noticed me. I went into my room, shut the door, and collapsed onto the floor. A scream rose in my throat but never made it out. Tears came silently, uncontrollably, as reality sank in. My son, my own son, had betrayed me. Not just by keeping secrets, but by standing against me with the man I had trusted with my heart. In that moment, something inside me broke. The bond one thought was unshakable turned to dust, slipping through my fingers like sand. And for the first time, I looked at my son not as my little boy, but as a stranger I didn't sleep that night. I sat in silence, replaying every moment, every sign I had ignored. Morning light crept through the curtains, but it didn't bring comfort. It brought clarity. By noon, I had made my decision. I couldn't pretend anymore. I needed the truth, from their own mouths. I called both Daniel and my son into the living room. My voice was calm, but inside, I was trembling. They sat across from me, unaware of what was coming. "I know," I said simply. The silence that followed was deafening. My son's face went pale. Daniel tried to feign confusion, but the flicker of guilt in his eyes gave him away. "I heard everything yesterday," I continued, my voice cracking. "The lies, the secrets, the betrayal. From both of you." They stumbled over excuses. Daniel reached for my hand, but I pulled away. My son looked down, tears welling up, but he didn't deny it. That hurt more than anything. "I trusted you," I whispered to him, my throat tight. "I raised you alone. I believed you would protect me, not destroy me." His tears fell then, but they couldn't undo the damage. Trust, once broken, isn't easily rebuilt. The argument that followed wasn't loud, it was cold, heavy, final. I told Daniel to leave. I didn't care for explanations anymore. My marriage was over in that moment. As for my son, I told him he needed to leave the house for a while. Not forever, but long enough for me to breathe, to think, to heal. The hardest part wasn't losing Daniel. It was realizing that my son, the person I had built my entire life around, had made a choice that broke us both. Days turned into weeks. The house was quieter, emptier, but strangely, lighter. I spent time reflecting, rebuilding myself piece by piece. I found strength in solitude, something I hadn't felt in years. One evening, as the sun set, I stood by the window, watching the sky burn orange and red. A soft breeze passed through the curtains, carrying with it a sense of bittersweet peace. I realized then that betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. Sometimes it comes from the people we'd give our lives for. And when it does, it changes everything. I don't know what the future holds for my son and me. Maybe one day, forgiveness will come. But for now, I choose myself. I choose to heal. Because in the end, no matter how deep the betrayal, my story isn't over. It's just beginning again.